streaming December 12th on Peacock. Paris Hilton and Nicole Richie are back.
That's hot. Loves it.
For a show-stopping reunion that will prove putting on an opera is anything but simple.
We're really good at this.
One thing's for sure, they won't be upstaged.
Good to have you back. Come on, we've got a show to do.
Paris and Nicole, The Encore, a 3-part reunion special, streaming December 12th, only on Peacock.
With Lululemon, the real gift happens when they're living in it. When you give them the softest loungewear set, the real gift is this. And this. And this. This holiday, Lululemon makes it easy to give a gift that goes beyond. Open the moment. Shop now at lululemon.com.
Hi, it's Dave here, and this is my wife, Cathy.
Hello.
And this is my mother-in-law, Linda.
Hello.
And this is The Cinemile. It's the podcast where we walk home from the movies. Today we're going to see a movie with Cillian Murphy. Excuse me, award-winning Cork man Cillian Murphy, as we must call him in Cork at all times. You know, we what did we make? We put a post box up in honour of him or something, or did we put a plaque on a post box in Cork?
Cillian Murphy won the Oscar this year, and everyone in Cork's pretty proud, to put it mildly.
Yeah.
So we will not offer an unbiased opinion on his acting.
Did we put up something on
Yeah, he's got his name on a post box somewhere in
that's
Cork,
so
I think,
sweet.
or something.
It's like a Rory Gallagher street.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
We're
yeah,
very
yeah.
proud, and with good cause, because he is a fantastic actor, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing him in this movie, Small Things Like These, which is an adaptation of the novella made by the author who made The Quiet Girl on Colleen Kuhn, which both of you have seen, right?
Yes,
Right.
and that book was called Foster, the one that they made on Colleen Kuhn from. And this book was called Small Things Like These.
You've read Small Things Like These?
I have. I read it
Yeah.
when it was pretty recently out. And I was blown away. I was genuinely blown away by it, so I'm looking forward to seeing this.
Can you tell us a little bit about what it's about?
Okay, without giving too many spoilers, it's basically a short period over Christmas in the life of a coal man in a small town in Ireland. And he's having flashbacks, he's having spasms of conscience, I guess. He's delivering to a convent. There's a long story here and a lot of drama around what were institutions for unmarried mothers, where women were sent to have their babies and the babies were essentially taken from them. It's a very dark period or episode in Irish history that went on.
Organised by the Catholic Church.
Yes. Oh yeah, they would have been Catholic institutions run by nuns. And yeah, without giving any spoilers, he confronts that aspect in himself and on the outside.
Well said. Good
Yes.
job. You should do the trailer for this movie.
I will do the
Cathy,
trailer.
are you excited to get into the dark history of the country that we live in?
I
yes!
am, yeah. I mean, I think it's going to be really good. I think the trailer's fab. Obviously, love Cillian Murphy, and I really, really loved on Colleen Kuhn when it came out. I haven't read this book, though I've read some of her other work, which I really like. So yeah, I'm pumped. We go?
Let's go. See you on the other side.
Bye.
You'd want to watch what you'd say about what's there. People can make things difficult for you.
Don't you ever question it?
The Lord is compassion and love, slow to anger and rich in mercy. No, don't be thinking you're in any trouble. The Lord is compassion and love. The Lord is compassion and love. The Lord is compassion and love.
If you want to get on in this life, there are things you have to ignore.
Okay, hi, we're back. We have seen Small Things Like These. If it's your first time here at the Cinemile, we won't spoil the movie until we get to spoiler street. Although I will say this isn't a very plot heavy movie. This movie is basically Cillian Murphy's Eyes, the movie. Let's start with you, Linda. Linda, how are you feeling after having gone through that?
Honestly, it was
Both in real life and because you lived through this. We all lived through this,
well,
but you
we
were
did.
an adult who was conscious of it.
I was an adult
Yeah.
in the 80s in this movie, set in the 80s. I'm an adult with children. But anyway, how do I feel coming out of the movie? Like, I don't know if you've ever been hypnotised, but I'm like in a deep state of hypnosis, like Cillian Murphy's eyes. Oh my gosh.
Those
They
baby
do.
blues.
Those kind of slightly wet baby blues. So, yeah, my first impression is that it was mesmerising with strong performances. I'm also feeling very conflicted because the book seemed quite different, not in story but in where it landed, and also because I was like married with children in the 80s. This doesn't feel like 1980s Ireland, and that's kind of it's throwing me a little. Now, having said that,
This is Wexford, though,
This
right?
is
Isn't it?
exactly-
And you were in Cork at that
no,
time?
I was in
The
Dublin. I
metropolis
moved to
of
Cork.
Cork.
I moved
Yeah.
from the first to the second city boy. So it just doesn't fit with where I was in the 80s. But then I wasn't aware of the horror of the Magdalene laundries in the 80s. So,
So
it
you
does
didn't know
speak
at
to
all?
that.
Did you know what was happening?
I honestly will say I did actually know girls who were sent away and have babies, but I had no idea. No, I genuinely had no idea. So I was as blindsided as many people.
My mom says she wasn't even aware that they existed.
I knew they existed.
Yeah.
I didn't know the horrors of them. I genuinely believed they were supporting young women to have their babies
it was-
for adoption.
it was
And the
deliberately
worst part,
obscured and kept
it was
private,
very
wasn't it? Yeah,
obscured. But the bit that when all the horrors and the revelations came, the bit that really hit me, I grew up knowing so many people who were adopted. And I was thinking, what a lovely thing that they got lovely homes. And it was literally only in the last 5 years that it hit me that every person I know who is adopted, came out of one of those Magdalene
Wow.
laundries. And that really threw me. And that's my very short summary of how I feel coming out of that movie. Shocked and mesmerised.
I will say, if you want, we're not going to go into the full extent of this here, but if you don't have the full context of the background of what happened in Ireland during the decades that these facilities were open, you're not going to get that here. You're also not going to get it from the movie. I recommend just reading up on it, or there's a movie called The Magdalene
Sisters.
Laundry, is
The
it?
Magdalene
Magdalene
Sisters.
Sisters, which actually has the woman, the actress that plays Cillian Murphy's wife in this, is in that movie actually, and also Philomena, I think, with Steve Coogan
Yeah,
and
slightly.
Judi Dench, kind of touches on this.
Yeah,
quite a lot as
slightly
well.
Hollywoodized version,
little
but
bit,
yeah,
yeah.
touches on what it is to be reunited with one of your children.
Yeah, a
yeah.
different angle,
Yes, a
but
different
I
angle.
think explains the context a little.
And you're
more
right.
than
Let's
this movie.
like we can park the horrors and just move on with what was the movie.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
Cathy, what was the movie?
So I really, really was taken with this film in the sense that it's a very slow pace. As you said, Dave, there's probably not a huge amount of plot, but at the same time I was never bored. I was kind of mesmerised, a bit like Mom, by the setting. Took me a while to realise it was the 80s. Actually, I thought it was like the 60s or 70s. It felt like totally unrecognisable to me as having been in like in my lifetime. And I think, you know, Cillian Murphy, like obviously we love him because he's from Cork, but like that aside, he is incredible. Like he could be the only person in the movie and I would follow the movie, you know. He really plays somebody who's having an inner turmoil and who doesn't speak very much, astonishingly, because obviously the book's different, but like in this, you know, because Mom was saying you kind of get his inner monologue in the book. They didn't really translate that here, so you're really not hearing him speak very often, but Cillian Murphy can pull it off. In another actor's hands it could be boring. It's not boring in his hands. And I thought the dilemma and the setting, and as we learn more about the character's life through flashbacks, I thought that was done really, really well. Flashbacks can often be a bit naff.
Yeah.
They were not naff here. Yeah, I loved it, absolutely loved it, and I'm all gung-ho for Cillian Murphy to get his second Oscar 2 years in a row.
I was floored by his performance here, and the movie is his performance. It just is. Now, but I loved it too. But I gotta say I was a little bit thrown because I watched the trailer for this when we went to see The Apprentice, and I was like, I said to you straight away, Cathy, I was saying, we have to see this movie. This looks incredible. It looked like a gripping mile-a-minute like political thriller, like an Erin Brockovich type thing, where it's one person standing up against the persecution of an organisation and nobody's on their side, and it's just like the trailer sells it like a thriller. And it isn't, and I think it's really been mismarketed. Now, I understand you got to get bums on seats, but so I was a bit thrown when I was trying to get on the same wavelength as the movie, because it's not that. There is hardly any plot in this movie. It is all vibes. It is all vibes and eyes. You are just spending time with this man who is grappling with something that everyone else in the community is turning a blind eye to, and he is unable to because of his personal circumstances and his own kindness and his ability to empathize and relate to this situation, and his just exposure his first-hand exposure to some of the horrors and persecutions that are happening. And I think what you get, like you've both said, is you get a person grappling with their own conscience, morality, and it's all in his eyes. It's an incredible performance. He is somebody who is constantly on the verge of saying something or crying or breaking down, but he never kind of goes any which way. He stays in the middle, and that, I think, sums up a lot of Irish culture really well, and this sort of, as Kneecap put it, intergenerational trauma, where I feel like we all have this sort of inability to stick our necks out or stand up for ourselves, this inherent sort of modesty, humility, and I don't know, is it from 800 years of colonial persecution or persecution under the church, but there's something in our society where Irish people just tend to go along with things, and I recognize that in myself. Now, I'm speaking in broad terms here, but I think this movie captures that really well, and the bravery that it requires to go against the grain.
It also captures the fact that, like, if you lived in a small town and there was only one good school and it was run by the nuns and your kids are all girls in the same school, what do you do, right?
Yeah,
and I think that was a really interesting dilemma. I feel like we should go to spoilers though before we.
Let's do that. Before we do, would you recommend people see this, or what's the right context in which to watch this?
I would just watch it to be moved by memorable performances. As you say, its backdrop is a bit of a horror story, and that just is what it is. But to see some memorable performances and there's something really interesting about the cinematographer and how that camera captured things.
Mm-hmm.
There was something about that, so it's well worth a watch.
You feel like you're really in the room, like their home feels small and cozy, but you're at the kitchen table a lot with this
I
big
love their home.
family.
It reminded me of a house we used to live in. Mom knows the house.
A tiny house. It
was so warm though, and full of love.
Warm and full of love and full of like families together, but tiny. It felt. I was almost hyperventilating, feeling the smallness of the space, and that was the impact of the movie and the cinema, whatever that word is.
And I love how there was like this kind of ongoing, like, I don't know what the word is, motif, because he's a coal man. Every time he comes in, and it's this kind of ritual he goes through where he's scrubbing his hands and like washing the day off before he even says hi girls.
Yes, 50% of the movie is Cillian Murphy washing his hands.
And I got into it, because like I feel like he's a character who's like so sad and so introverted, and he needs to, like, the way people need to like put on a mask before they go into social situations. They might like have a drink or put on a persona. He's almost like he's to get the day off him, wash the coal off him, and then he's able to gather himself enough to be like, hi girls.
Yes,
it's a big effort for him.
It's the gathering of himself is what's happening in those hand washing moments. Anyway, spoilers.
But it is a brilliant, as you say, it's a central theme that you can extrapolate. Washing your hands is such a powerful metaphor for people, society washing their hands of those girls, for him trying to wash his hands of his own past, and it's just like it goes right back to Lady Macbeth, out damn spot. Like you just cannot, you cannot wash your hands of this stuff.
You can't, and that was very much, I think, a creative decision because it wasn't such a big thing in the book. Yes, we knew. Came home.
He
and
didn't spend pages washing his hands.
Yes, it wouldn't really translate in a book.
No, it wouldn't translate in a book.
The book is like, he puts the soap on his hands. He rubs his hands. He gets the nail scrubber out. He puts the stopper in the soap. He washes his hands like society washing their hands.
He does. And the thing, I think something about this that did strike me, I remember reading, now I think I saw in the trailer that it was based on a novel. It's really based on a novella. It's a 55-minute read to read this story. And they made a full-length movie.
Not on my read.
Yeah, so not the way you read.
Yeah.
It's a short read, it's a short novella. And so they had the space to put everything in and draw it out.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Dave, I know you said you thought it was going to be a thriller, but like I never thought that because I've seen on Colleen Kuhn. So you
right, yeah, maybe I was on the wrong page.
But you had read the book too.
I haven't read this book, no.
Oh, no, you haven't. Sorry.
I've read
Am I
different.
the only one who's read it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
I've read other
interesting.
stuff by her, but not this. Anyway,
That gives me the power, eh?
Yeah, that's
You
why you're
follow
here.
me.
You're the
Yes, that's
expert.
why I'm here.
Yeah,
That's why you're here.
Why, thanks.
Right.
Anyway, we shall be back with spoilers, and you might hear a quick ad before we're back.
Hello, this is Simon Mayo.
And this is Mark Kermode.
He's the UK's best and most trusted film critic.
He's a best-selling writer, broadcaster, and national treasure.
Far too kind. Kermode and Mayo's Take has all the reviews you need and star guests such as
Sir Ian McKellen.
Nice to be with you.
Emma Stone.
That sounds like something I would love to be a part of.
Ewan McGregor.
I'm very good. How are you doing?
Kate Blanchett. What was that word you used?
Cattywampus.
Kermode and Mayo's Take. All the film you need. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
Okay, so spoilers now for small things like these. I mean, there's not a whole lot to spoil except the
There
end.
is, because
Yeah.
I really was like, completely carried along by like the dilemma, like, will he, won't he?
Yeah.
What's he going to do? Because I totally would have understood after that incredibly threatening scene with the head nun.
Oh my god! Oh, we haven't
Which
even
was
talked about Emma
incredible,
Watson.
yeah.
She's
I
great
was
in
like,
this.
he could go either way here. Yeah, Emma Watson and him have like, I think it's one of those incredible scenes that you could watch forever and be like,
Well, it's what's not
so powerful.
That scene is so good for what's not being said.
Mm-hmm.
You know, she's the way she threatens him
She's so scary.
with smiles, and she's like, "Oh, tell me about your girls." It's this Cold War sort of standoff between the two of those. She's saying basically, you know, I'm in control of your girls' future and their education, and the only, you know, he's on the back foot the whole time until the one moment where he puts his back up is when she says, "Oh, it's a shame that you don't have any males to carry on your name." And
that was
he
so
hits
good.
back at her with, you know, "I took my mother's name," you know, a reminder
He
of
said
his
it never
own-
did me any harm.
Yeah.
And he's actually he's appears to be actually quite successful because he runs his own business. He's a boss to a lot of men. He's like a nice boss. He buys them all drinks Christmas Eve. Like, he is quite educated and successful, I think.
And that's just given that we're on Spoiler Street, that becomes very clear from the flashbacks. His own mother was an unmarried mother. She got pregnant and she was taken in by a woman in a big house, or else she already worked there. I think she might have already worked there.
I think so.
She got pregnant. Now, she died when he was still quite young, but he continued to live on in the big house until he was an adult, and he did get educated and he did have privilege.
And he
So that was the conflict. And yes, my big contribution here to Spoiler Street as well is that I did see the writer Claire Keegan quoted as having said, somebody asked, was this just a man whose conscience, as you were saying, Dave, conscience, and he couldn't bear it? And she said, no, this was a man who was having a breakdown.
Yeah, he's very evidently having a breakdown, like, because at one point I think it's because it's the Christmas setting, and his mother, did she die around Christmas?
She did.
So one of the kids says just, "Oh, Dad, they're doing their Santa letters," and the kid says, "Oh, Daddy, what did you get? Did you ever get something from Santa?" And he
jigsaw.
he basically has an anxiety attack, and he's like, I did, yeah. And then it cuts back, and it's like this heartbreaking thing where he wants a jigsaw so much for Christmas.
Why
and then
didn't
his
the old
mom,
woman? Why didn't the woman of the house get him the
because
jigsaw?
she probably didn't realise.
But he told her he wanted a
No,
jigsaw.
he told her
from
he'd
Santa.
asked Santa for a jigsaw.
Oh, I guess it's
She-
so it's the responsibility of his mother.
Well,
is
she's
it?
not. like she doesn't buy, like she wasn't
I
involved
suppose,
in
yeah.
that. Like I often have kids telling me what they've asked Santa for. I don't go off and get them what they're looking for.
As if she would have known the mother's circumstances.
Well, I guess
so.
she didn't. And then the mother bought him the hot water bottle, and that little kid was such a good actor.
He was very good.
And I love
That was
how
heartbreaking.
they kind of illustrated him grappling. And you're right, Mum, having that breakdown, because they show him lying in bed looking at himself as a kid. And it's just like, God, it was so good.
And that's heartbreaking, and I think it's said in the trailer too, like your heart, Cillian Murphy will break your heart in this. And I think that's essentially what triggered it, his memories of his own childhood around Christmas time, the fact that his mother was an unmarried mother, and he saw the alternative that would have happened when he came across the setting and the horror. And I think it was about him trying to rescue his past, trying to rescue his mother, because in the end, we haven't said it, he plucks a woman in despair out of that,
the coal shed.
Who's being physically tortured
and emotionally
as well.
tortured, who's had her baby taken off her. He plucks her up and he takes her home. End of movie.
I think he actually...
It's a great ending.
And that's where the story begins.
But it was like that. That is for me.
It was so good.
Like, I love the message of this movie, which is essentially that kindness and empathy can triumph over like staggering odds.
But there's loads of things that made him do it as well. Like, not one thing made him do it, but I think it was being in that room with the head nun. And she's like gaslighting him. She gets the girl to sit down, and she's like, "Oh, what were you doing in the coal shed?" And the girl's like, "Oh, me and the girls are playing hide and seek." Now we know
she's been briefed. She's been pulled aside.
Yeah, and I think him sitting there, like, I don't even think that he'd have. I probably think he mightn't have even objected to like the girls doing the laundry and cleaning.
Oh no!
It's that he knows she's literally been locked in a coal shed in the freezing cold, and like. And that he witnesses it too many times, and like even that small act of defiance he does initially, where he just runs into the kitchen and says, "This is my name. If you ever need help when you're out of here, come and find me."
Yes, you're right.
But then right at the end, he actually has that revelation where he walks all the way there to get her and carries her back.
That's that was a fist in the air sort of like. I was really moved by that.
And it is terrible that like
the power of that gesture.
It's crazy that
his wife at home, and we
wife.
We only have to imagine from what we were shown, this isn't going to go well for him.
No, see, this is the kind of thing where I'm glad the movie ends where it did, because as soon as you start to extrapolate the repercussions of this in the context of the real world, it is. I don't think this kind of thing happened. I think this is a bit of a fantasy. This is a sort of a wish fulfillment.
No, but his wife did say, like, he said, well, my mother was taken in, and she said, yeah, but by a woman who was rich and had power. Like, she didn't
get away with everything.
She could get away with whatever she wanted because she was rich and had power, and it didn't matter. And his wife's making the point that it does matter to them. But I don't think the girls had her baby yet, Mom, because she said, oh, I'm not going to have my baby for another 6 months. So I think... Like, they're bringing her back to their house. She's pregnant.
Shit. Oh
No, I think actually that's one of the places where it differed from the book. Right. I think in the book her baby was 4 months old, but she was still there. But I could be wrong.
So he's bringing her home to actually then have a baby in their house?
I think not, but maybe. That's either way, he's disrupting his life.
Otherwise, he doesn't need to bring her to his house. It's like she can just go. Like she needs a little bit of help, but then she could just go up to Dublin and get a job or something.
Maybe that's what we'll never know. He could bring her home and get her fed and rested and
get her
set her on her way. And I just need to speak here because, like, there was institutional horror, and we can name the church in this, but the families. And there's one scene where a mother is dragging her daughter. The families and communities not only allowed it to happen, they fed it.
Yeah, they enabled it.
And it's so shocking to me, and like it's so shocking that you will there's some notion of the family notionally trying to do the right thing from a societal perspective, but they know it's not the right thing. And then meanwhile, all these young men go around getting these women pregnant, and nothing ever happens.
I think it's shame.
There's no
I think
responsibility or repercussions. It's just the girls. The girls are sinful, and
the churches,
they were pregnant out of thin air.
The church's currency is shame, and that's how they exert control. You come to us and you give us your confessions. We tell you the moral code, and then if you step out of it, you come back to us and we'll sort it out. It's complete exertion of control.
It also
and
just
power.
proves that abstinence does not work as sex education. Like, Never has, never will. It's a stupid policy. Doesn't work.
It doesn't work. But anyway, let's get back to the movie and let's not make a podcast that's
we
longer
could be
than the
here
actual
for a long
novella.
time if we get. Anyway, yeah, I'm not sure what else to cover except.
I want to say
go on.
there was something that hit me, and it's to do with the performances. I think Emily Watson, that's her name, isn't
I think
she?
so, yeah.
The Mother Superior. She was fantastic.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my goodness! But
Frightening.
But I think there was something that happened for me watching it. Is that I was watching her, and I was watching Cillian Murphy, and they were epic, mesmerising performances. And what that did was it almost shrunk everybody and everything else into a very secondary place for me.
Okay.
And I'm not sure whether that was intended. It's like all the other performances they seem to be very downplayed, down low. It's as if there was just a spotlight on two characters, and that might have been deliberate, and if it was, it worked.
I think they are the two, that's our protagonist and our antagonist.
Yes.
Really, that is the biggest moment of tension and conflict, is that scene in her office, which is, and I thought the way that that set did a lot of work as well. This sort of walking through these cold clinical corridors with these women in garments cooking and doing labour.
And he so doesn't want to be there. Like, he won't even take like milk or sugar in his tea. He's just like,
no,
get me out of here. And then she gives the wad of cash to the wife. That was sinister.
But it's,
and then the wife's like, oh, isn't that very kind of her? I mean, the wife is like, I guess they needed different characters to represent
different aspects.
And the wife's just worried about like paying, she's got her normal like own issues going on, which is she just wants to pay for Christmas. She wants the girls to be happy.
And she wants an odd pair of new shoes and the windows fixed. Very shallow. If that's portraying your average woman from the 1980s, it was very one-dimensional.
And she made a really nasty comment to her own husband when she goes, oh, well, it was far from something you were reared.
Oh, yeah, she was.
And it's like, but don't you know that surely he had an unmarried mother in like the 50s, and then that she died in front of him at a young age. What kind of a comment is that to make to your own spouse? So, but again, I don't think the film was trying to make her a villain.
No, I think if we're being generous, I think that they're just trying to portray her as everybody who is just trying to get on and focus on themselves and their own. Yes. And she certainly seemed like a perfectly fine person, but didn't have the capacity or the ability to extend her compassion outwards or to challenge established norms.
It was chilling though, because at the very beginning of the movie, and I don't know if you remember, but they were talking about Christmas, and she said, oh, do you want to invite your man, who is kind of his uncle / father, we don't really know, and he goes, oh, do we have room? And she said, well, the place is full anyway, of course we've room for one more.
Yes,
but then she doesn't extend that later. She's not saying we've room for another. She's not saying we've room to help someone.
Good point. Yeah, well, no, but we've no room to completely break down social barriers and go against the Catholic Church.
Have a fifth teenage girl living in her house who's possibly about to give birth. And then of course you have the woman who runs the pub, who also is doing her best and says to him, "You're a really good guy. Like, don't fuck with the church." She said, "We both know." So it seems like she's had some troubles as well with them. She was just, everyone's just trying to warn him off. Anyway, it was so good. Continue to love the rise of Irish cinema.
It's really having a moment.
It was so good, yeah.
And I think for people who are, I just want to put this in, for people who maybe aren't Irish, there were some scenes there, like there was a child drinking milk from a cat's bowl on the street. There's almost children picking up sticks for the fire. There was poverty portrayed that I don't think was widespread in the 80s. It looked like more like scenes from Angela's Ashes, to be honest.
From the 50s.
So I think there was something about the history of Ireland in those scenes, but that's not. I mean, the 80s was the beginning of the boom and the Celtic Tiger. So there will have been some poverty.
There were rural parts of Ireland, surely, at that time, that wouldn't have seen the benefit from that. Certainly not at the early stages, right?
No, but this was New Ross. It wasn't.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, but also though, look at Ireland now. Look at Ireland now. It's like one of the richest countries, and yet look at our levels of poverty and homelessness. So
we do have.
God, we need another half an hour to get into that.
What I'm saying is, we don't have it as those scenes portrayed.
Yeah, that's why we thought it was the 50s.
That's why we were
like, even when Angela's Ashes came out, people said that it was made up, that the kids were all licking the fat off the newspaper from the fish and chip shops.
What's his name? Frank McCourt?
Yeah.
He was accused of
like poverty porn,
yeah,
basically.
probably. Yeah.
But anyway, that's for another day. We're not here to review Angela's Ashes. But thank you, Mom. Always good to have you on the podcast.
Yes.
Our listeners love when
Thank
Mom
you.
comes on, though she's more often on the Patreon than the main feed. So you'll have to get over there.
Go sign up for their Patreon,
Yeah.
whatever that is.
Oh, what a good
What a good play. Oh, I love coming on. It's funny for your listeners that I'm always coming on thinking, look, don't turn to me, I have nothing to say. And then it's hard to stop me talking.
Yeah, then you have the most informed opinion of anyone. So yeah, thanks Linda, and thanks for listening everyone. If you want to chat to us, you can do it at the Cinemile on Instagram, Letterboxd, TikTok, or why not email us, thecinemile@gmail.com.
Or it's all hotting up over on Blue Sky.
Oh, Blue Sky,
Yeah,
we're back.
We made
Yeah.
an account there a long time ago, and it is back from the dead.
It is the only good thing to happen from the US
Yeah,
election.
it feels really fun. So yeah, there you go.
Yeah, see you there. Or why not leave us a nice review? Leave Linda a review. Linda needs reviews under the Cinemile podcast. Write a comment saying we love Linda. And if you don't love Linda, don't say anything. Just shut up.
Everybody loves Linda.
Bye.
Bye.